Cale Rourke stared through the transparent window of the Skyline bus as it glided along the luminescent rails above Neo Athena. The city sprawled beneath him like a constellation fallen to Earth, a dazzling fusion of Terran architecture and alien engineering. Spires of crystalline material caught the light of Tafria's twin suns, refracting it into rainbows that danced across the cityscape. To most visitors, the view would have been breathtaking. To Cale, it was just another stop on a disappointing tour. He shifted his massive frame in the specially reinforced seat. Standard accommodations were rarely sufficient for his 2-meter-tall, 130-kilogram body. The Terran powerlifter's muscles strained against his travel clothes, a custom-fitted jumpsuit with the Earth Confederation emblem emblazoned across the back. His competition days were behind him for now. This trip was supposed to be a vacation, a chance to clear his head after his crushing defeat at the Galactic Strength Championship 3 months ago. "Final call for boarding," announced the AI conductor in 6 different languages. "Skyline Express to Luminara Valley departing in 2 minutes." A rush of last-minute passengers hurried onto the bus. A family of spindly Arcturians with their iridescent skin. A pair of bulbous Eridonians floating slightly above the floor on their gravity-negating discs. And 3 Tafrian officials in their characteristic silver uniforms. The bus was now nearly full, a microcosm of the interplanetary society that had flourished since Earth had joined the Galactic Confederation in 2389. Cale tried to make himself smaller, as the Eridonians, Etri and Velen, according to their animated introduction to everyone within earshot, chose the seats across from him. Their bulging compound eyes widened at the sight of him. "A Terran!" Etri exclaimed, their translator pendant converting their clicks and whistles into standard galactic. "And such a large specimen! Are you a warrior-class human?" Cale forced a smile. "No, just a powerlifter." "Power-lifter." Velen tilted their gelatinous head. "You lift power sources?" "I lift heavy objects. For sport." Cale had given this explanation countless times during his tour. "Fascinating!" Etri's bioluminescent patches pulsed with excitement. "On our world, physical strength is considered primitive. We evolved beyond the need for muscles 10,000 years ago." Cale nodded politely, but turned away. He'd heard variations of this sentiment on every planet he'd visited, in a galaxy of advanced technology and evolved species. Humanity's physical prowess was often viewed as a quaint, evolutionary relic. Interesting, but obsolete. The bus hummed to life, lifting gently off the platform and accelerating along the translucent skyway. They ascended higher, leaving the central district of Neo Athena and following the route that would take them over the famous light canyons, massive fissures in Tafria's crust that emitted natural bioluminescence from the unique ecosystems below. As they cruised at altitude, Cale caught snippets of conversation around him. The Tafrian officials were discussing some new regulation about restricted technology. A human couple was arguing in hushed tones about vacation plans. An Andarian diplomat was negotiating a trade deal via holographic projection. Cale closed his eyes. 3 months ago, he had been at the peak of his career, favored to win the heavyweight division at the Galactic Championship. Then came the catastrophic final lift. The weights had slipped. His form had broken. And he'd suffered not just defeat, but humiliation in front of billions of viewers across the galaxy. The injury to his shoulder had healed, but his confidence remained fractured. His manager had suggested this tour, exhibitions on 12 planets, showing off Terran strength to fascinated aliens. It paid well, but felt hollow. He wasn't advancing his sport. He was a circus act, a curiosity, a relic of primitive human physicality. The bus jolted suddenly, snapping Cale from his thoughts. The smooth hum of the engines had changed to an alarming whine. "Minor system fluctuation," the AI announced calmly. "Please remain seated while—" The second jolt was violent enough to throw several passengers from their seats. Warning lights flashed across the bus interior as it lurched sickeningly to one side. Through the window, Cale saw they were passing directly over the deepest section of the light canyon, a drop of nearly 2 kilometers to the glowing floor below. Emergency systems engaged. The AI voice had lost its reassuring tone, replaced by flat urgency. Gravitational stabilizers offline, backup systems failing to respond. The bus tilted further, now at a 30-degree angle to the skyway. Passengers screamed as they slid toward the lower side. The Eridonians activated their gravity discs, allowing them to hover in place. But most others weren't so fortunate. Cale braced himself against his seat, muscles tensing as he assessed the situation. The skyway's safety fields should have activated by now, creating a containment bubble around the failing vehicle. But nothing happened. Safety field generator malfunction detected. The AI confirmed his fears. Calculating survival probability, 15%. The bus slipped further off the rail, now hanging precariously over the abyss. The engines screamed as they tried to compensate, but Cale could tell they were overloading. Through the front view screen, he saw the driver, a Tafrian male, frantically working the emergency controls to no effect. In that moment, clarity struck Cale like a physical blow. For the first time in months, his mind wasn't clouded by doubt or self-pity. There was only the immediate problem, and the knowledge that he alone might have the strength to solve it. He moved with purpose, forcing his way against the tilt of the floor toward the emergency exit on the lower side of the bus. Passengers watched in confusion as the massive human tore open the manual release panel and punched in the override code that was displayed for emergencies. "What are you doing?" demanded one of the Tafrian officials. "The safety protocols clearly state." "The protocols won't save us," Cale interrupted, pulling the emergency lever. The door hissed open, and the howling wind of high altitude rushed in. Below, the light canyon glowed with eerie beauty, a deadly, beckoning abyss. "All passengers, secure yourselves," Cale shouted over the wind in screams. "Grab onto something fixed." Before anyone could question him further, Cale took a deep breath and slipped through the door, using his powerful grip to hold onto the exterior handle. The bus was now almost completely off the rail, held only by one set of magnetic couplers that were failing by the second. With practiced movements, born from years of competition, Cale maneuvered himself along the outside of the bus, finding handholds in the decorative ridges of the vehicle's design. He made his way beneath the tilting transport, positioning himself under its center of gravity. Inside, passengers pressed their faces to the windows, watching in disbelief as the human positioned himself beneath the massive vehicle. Even the Eridonians, who had boasted about evolving beyond physical strength, stared in awe. "What is that Terran doing?" Etri whispered, forgetting their translator was still broadcasting to everyone nearby. The final magnetic coupler gave way with a screech of protesting metal. The bus began to fall. Cale roared, a primal sound that cut through the screams and the howling wind. His muscles bunched and strained as he caught the full weight of the bus on his shoulders and outstretched arms. Pain lanced through him. Familiar, yet more intense than anything he'd experienced before. The bus was at least 15 tons, far beyond any weight he'd lifted in competition. But this wasn't about form or technique. It was about raw survival instinct and the unique density of human muscle tissue that had evolved on Earth's higher gravity. For one terrible moment, his legs buckled. Then, drawing on reserves of strength he didn't know he possessed, Cale stabilized his stance on the narrow strip of skyway that remained beneath him. He stood, trembling with effort, holding a city bus filled with 28 passengers over a 2-kilometer drop. Inside the bus, pandemonium reigned. Most of the aliens had never witnessed such a display of physical strength without technological assistance. To many species that had evolved on low-gravity worlds, what they were seeing should have been physically impossible. "We're going to die," wailed a young Arcturian, their skin flashing distress patterns. "The Terran is holding us," shouted someone else. "How is that possible?" The Tafrian officials huddled together, their silver uniforms gleaming in the emergency lights. One of them activated a communication device. "Central Security. This is official Tarek aboard Skyline Express 47. We have an emergency situation over Light Canyon, Section 6. The bus has detached from the Skyway and is currently being held by a Terran passenger." Even through the translation, the disbelief in the official's voice was evident. Cale couldn't hear the conversations inside. His entire world had narrowed to the burning agony in his muscles and the desperate need to hold on. He knew he couldn't maintain this position for long, perhaps minutes at most, but minutes might be enough for help to arrive. As he held the massive weight, a strange calm descended over him. The doubts that had plagued him since his competition failure faded away. This wasn't about proving himself to an audience or winning medals. This was what his strength was truly for, when it mattered most. Inside the bus, the driver had regained some composure and was addressing the terrified passengers. "Please remain calm. Emergency services have been notified and are en route. The human appears to be temporarily stabilizing our position." The Eridonians hovered near a window, their compound eyes fixed on Cale's straining form. "I have studied Terran physiology," Velen said, voice tinged with academic interest despite the situation. "Their muscular density is remarkable, but this exceeds all documented limits. He should not be able to support this mass." "Perhaps your studies are incomplete," Etri replied, watching as Cale adjusted his grip slightly, causing the bus to sway alarmingly. More than fear, many passengers now felt a different emotion as they watched the human struggle to hold their lives in his hands, a dawning awe. But not everyone on the bus was focused on Cale's heroic efforts. In the rear compartment, the three Tafrian officials had clustered around a nondescript cargo container that had broken loose from the secured storage area during the initial jolt. "The containment field is destabilizing," one whispered urgently. "If the prototype is damaged—" "It doesn't matter now," interrupted another. "The courier wasn't supposed to be on this transport anyway. This entire situation is a security breach." Their furtive behavior didn't go unnoticed. The human couple who had been arguing earlier were now watching the officials with suspicious expressions. Outside, Cale felt a shift in the bus's weight distribution. Something was moving inside, changing the balance point. He grunted and compensated, but each adjustment drained his rapidly depleting energy reserves. Through the rushing wind, he heard the distant wail of emergency vehicles. Help was coming, but would it arrive in time? The skyway above him had no access points for rescue craft to hover nearby. Standard procedure would involve deploying a containment field from a distance, but that would take precise calibration. Inside the bus, tensions were escalating. The Tafrian officials had created a makeshift barrier around the cargo container, their behavior becoming increasingly suspicious to the other passengers. "What's in that container?" demanded one of the humans. A woman with the insignia of the Earth Intelligence Service, partially concealed beneath her jacket. "Official business. Return to your seat," replied the lead Tafrian coldly. "Whatever's in there shifted when you moved it," she persisted. "And our Terran friend outside is bearing the consequences of that shift. If it's destabilizing his hold, this is a matter of planetary security." The Tafrian cut her off. "Interference will result in immediate detention upon rescue." The standoff might have escalated further, but at that moment, the entire bus shuddered violently. Outside, Cale had nearly lost his grip as his strength began to fail. Time was running out. The emergency services were visible now, sleek, silvery craft approaching rapidly along the skyway. But they were still at least 2 minutes away. Cale knew he wouldn't last that long. Not in his current position. With a decision born of desperation, he began to move. Inside, passengers screamed anew as the bus shifted. They thought the Terran had finally given out. that they were falling to their deaths. But instead, they felt a steady motion as Kale, with agonizing slowness, began walking. Step by step, he carried the bus back toward the skyway's edge, where a narrow maintenance platform offered more stable footing. His entire body shook with the effort, sweat pouring from him despite the cold, high-altitude air. The Eridonians watched in fascination. "Remarkable," Velon whispered. "The calculated force required for this feat exceeds the documented tensile strength of Terran bone structure. His skeleton should be collapsing." "Perhaps," Etri replied thoughtfully, "there is value in physical evolution after all." With a final, tremendous effort, Kale reached the maintenance platform and, muscles screaming in protest, carefully lowered the bus until it rested securely on the reinforced surface. Only then did he allow himself to collapse to his knees, gasping for breath. His body pushed beyond any rational limit. The emergency vehicles arrived moments later, deploying containment fields around the bus and platform to ensure no further slippage. Rescue workers in sleek protective gear began evacuating passengers via hover platforms. Inside the bus, the Tafrian officials had used the distraction to secure their mysterious container. As evacuation began, they insisted on priority extraction, citing governmental authority. The Earth intelligence operative narrowed her eyes, but didn't interfere. Instead, she transmitted a coded message through her concealed communicator. Whatever was happening, higher authorities would soon be involved. Kale remained on the platform, too exhausted to move, as rescue workers reached him last. "Incredible," said the Tafrian medic who examined him. "You've torn approximately 60% of your major muscle groups. By all medical logic, you should be unconscious or dead." Kale managed a weak smile. "Terrans are stubborn that way." As they lifted him onto a medical transport, he caught sight of the bus passengers watching him from the rescue vehicles. Their expressions had changed, the fear and panic replaced by something new: respect, awe, and in some cases, gratitude. For the first time since his competitive failure, Kale felt a sense of purpose returning. Perhaps there was more to strength than winning medals. Perhaps there was something to be said for the primitive, human trait of raw physical power in a galaxy of technological marvels. As the medical transport pulled away, he didn't notice the Tafrian officials hurriedly transferring their container to a separate, unmarked vehicle. Nor did he see the dark figures observing the entire scene from a cloaked platform far above the skyway. Figures whose interest was piqued not by the heroic rescue, but by what nearly fell into the Light Canyon. The incident at Light Canyon would prove to be only the beginning of a much larger conflict, one that would test not just Kale's physical strength, but his character, his values, and his understanding of what it truly meant to be strong. Commander Lyra Dex stared at the holographic display in the Tafrian security headquarters. Her silver uniform immaculate, despite the chaos of the past 2 hours. The display showed multiple angles of the skyline incident, including several that captured the moment when the massive Terran had caught the falling bus. "Play it again," she ordered, her voice betraying none of the astonishment she felt. The footage rewound and played in slow motion, the bus detaching from the skyway. The Terran, identified as Kale Rourke, Earth Confederation citizen, professional strength athlete, moving with surprising agility for his size. The impossible moment when 15 tons of vehicle and passengers settled onto his shoulders without crushing him. "Analysis confirms no technological assistance," reported her adjutant. "No strength enhancers, no gravity manipulators, no exoskeletal support, just natural Terran physiology." Lyra's brow furrowed. "That's not possible. Even accounting for their higher gravity evolution, no single Terran should be capable of supporting that mass. The medical scans show abnormal bone density and muscle fiber composition," the adjutant continued. "He appears to be an outlier, even among Terrans. But there's something else." The display shifted to show the three Tafrian officials and their hasty departure with the mysterious container. Facial recognition identified them as Security Division 7. They were transporting a Class X restricted technology prototype. According to official records, that transport was supposed to be disguised as a waste management vehicle, not a public bus. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Someone altered the transport protocols. Find out who authorized the change. As her adjutant hurried away, Lyra turned back to the image of Cale Rourke, frozen in the moment of his greatest strain. Something didn't add up. The timing of the bus malfunction, the presence of Earth intelligence on the same transport, the diverted prototype. Coincidences were rare in her line of work. "Where is the Terran now?" she asked. "Central Medical Facility. He's recovering from extensive muscle trauma, but refusing advanced cellular regeneration. Insists on healing the natural way." Lyra made a decision. "I want to speak with him and increase surveillance on all parties involved in today's incident." As she turned to leave, a secure communication alert chimed. The message was brief but alarming. Phantom Core signature detected in Neo Athena. Possible connection to Skyline incident. Lyra's expression hardened. Phantom Core, the most elusive hacker collective in the sector, known for stealing and replicating restricted technology. If they were involved, the situation was far more dangerous than a simple transport malfunction. She glanced once more at the image of Cale holding the bus. Perhaps the Terran's incredible strength would yet prove useful in ways beyond physical feats. Cale drifted in and out of consciousness in the medical facility. The pain medication they'd given him was calibrated for Tafrian physiology, less effective on his Terran biochemistry. Every muscle in his body screamed in protest when he tried to move. In his moments of lucidity, he pieced together fragments of conversation from the medical staff. Completely exceeded theoretical limits for muscle stress tolerance. Should have experienced catastrophic skeletal collapse. Recommend full study of his genetic profile. He wanted to tell them it wasn't genetics. Any elite powerlifter from Earth could have done what he did. Maybe not held the bus quite as long, but in that moment of crisis, any of them would have tried. It wasn't some special Terran ability. It was simply human determination not to let others die when you had the power to save them. During one of his conscious periods, he became aware of someone standing by his bed. Opening his eyes with effort, he found himself facing one of the Eridonians from the bus. "Etri," he recalled. "You are awake. Good." The alien's translator pendant converted their clicks into standard galactic. "I wish to observe you before departing our world." Cale tried to speak, found his throat dry, and accepted the water tube the Eridonian offered. "You're leaving to Freya?" he managed after drinking. "Yes. The research symposium I was attending concluded today. However, I find myself revising the thesis of my presentation after yesterday's events." "What was your thesis?" Cale asked, genuinely curious. "The evolutionary redundancy of physical strength in advanced civilizations." Etri's compound eyes seemed to express something like embarrassment. "I had argued that species like yours represent an evolutionary dead end, prioritizing physical development over neurological advancement." Despite his pain, Cale couldn't help but laugh. "And now? Now I must reconsider. What you did defied not just my thesis, but the established biomechanical models of 3 different scientific academies." Etri's head tilted. "On behalf of myself and Velen, I wish to express gratitude. Our species cannot produce offspring, but share consciousness with 7 others on our homeworld. Had we perished, those linked minds would have suffered tremendous psychological damage." Cale nodded, touched by the alien's candor. "I have a question, if permitted." Etri continued. "When you held the bus, your face expressed great pain. Yet you persisted. How did you override your neurological pain response?" Cale considered the question. "We have a saying on Earth, mind over matter. Sometimes, What you believe you can do becomes more important than the physical limitations you're supposed to have. Fascinating. Etri's bioluminescent patches pulsed with interest. I shall incorporate this concept into my revised thesis. After the Eridonian departed, Kale tried to rest, but his mind kept returning to the incident. Something had felt wrong about the whole situation. The bus malfunction had seemed too precise, too targeted, and those Tafrian officials had been unusually interested in some cargo they were transporting. His thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of a new visitor, a tall, severe-looking Tafrian female in a high-ranking security uniform. "Kale Rourke," she stated, rather than asked. "I am Commander Lyra Dex, Tafrian Security Division. I have questions about yesterday's incident." Kale tried to sit up, winced, and settled for making eye contact. "I've already given my statement to the transport authorities. This goes beyond a simple transit malfunction." Her voice was cool, professional. "The bus you saved was carrying sensitive technology that certain parties would go to extreme lengths to acquire." Kale's eyes narrowed. "You think the malfunction was deliberate? Sabotage?" "We're investigating all possibilities." She studied him with calculating eyes. "Your presence on that specific transport is statistically anomalous, as is your physical capability to prevent the disaster." "You think I was involved?" Kale felt anger rising through his pain. "I nearly killed myself saving those people." "Which makes you either a hero," Lyra replied evenly, "or an extremely committed operative creating a perfect cover story." Before Kale could respond, the medical facility's lights flickered ominously. A moment later, they cut out entirely, plunging the room into darkness before emergency lighting activated, with a dull, red glow. Lyra's communication device chimed with an urgent alert. Her expression changed from suspicion to alarm as she read the message. "Security breach," she said tersely. "Armed intruders. Stay here." She drew a sleek energy weapon from her uniform and moved to the door, listening intently. The sounds of commotion echoed from elsewhere in the facility. Shouts, running footsteps, and the distinctive whine of plasma weapons discharging. "Who would attack a medical facility?" Kale asked, fighting through his pain to push himself upright. Lyra gave him a measured look. "Someone who knows what was recovered from that bus, or someone very interested in you." The door burst open before she could elaborate further. 3 figures in matte black combat suits rushed in, faces concealed behind opaque visors. They carried advanced plasma rifles, definitely not standard-issue weapons. Lyra fired immediately, her energy weapon striking the lead attacker in the shoulder. The blast dissipated harmlessly against their armor. "Absorption shielding," she hissed, diving behind a medical cabinet as return fire scorched the wall where she'd been standing. Kale, despite his injuries, rolled from the bed and took cover on the opposite side of the room. His body protested violently, but adrenaline dulled the worst of the pain. "Commander Dex!" the lead attacker called out, voice distorted through their helmet. "We have no quarrel with you. Surrender the Terran and the prototype, and your personnel will remain unharmed." "There is no prototype here," Lyra responded, carefully adjusting something on her weapon. "And the Terran is under Tafrian protection. The tracking signature says otherwise." The attacker gestured, and one of their companions moved toward a sealed container in the corner of the room, a container Kale hadn't noticed before. The prototype was moved here with the Terran. Efficient, but predictable. Kale caught Lyra's eye across the room. She gave him a barely perceptible nod, then suddenly fired her weapon at the ceiling above the attackers. This time, instead of an energy blast, it released a blinding flash of light combined with a sonic pulse that disoriented even Kale. The attackers staggered, their enhanced helmet sensors overloaded by the flashbang effect. Lyra used the distraction to fire 3 precise shots at the leader's knee joints and weapon hand, spots not covered by the absorption shielding. The leader went down, but the other 2 recovered quickly. One grabbed the mysterious container, while the other laid down covering fire. forcing Lyra back into cover. Kale saw his opportunity. Ignoring the screaming protest of his injured muscles, he launched himself from behind the medical equipment, crossing the room in 2 powerful strides. The attackers, focused on Lyra, didn't notice the Terran until he was upon them. With one massive hand, Kale seized the rifle of the nearest attacker, crushing the weapon's barrel in his grip. With his other hand, he grabbed the attacker's chest plate and lifted them completely off the ground. "Drop the container," he growled at the third attacker, holding their comrade aloft as a demonstration of what could happen next. The third attacker hesitated, then made a break for the door with the container. They didn't make it 3 steps before Lyra's perfectly aimed shot hit the small propulsion unit on their back, sending them sprawling. Security forces arrived moments later, securing the attackers and the mysterious container. As the immediate danger passed, Kale's adrenaline faded, and the pain of his exertions hit him like a physical blow. He staggered, nearly falling. Lyra caught his arm, surprisingly strong for her slender frame. "That was either very brave or very foolish. Terran." Kale managed a pained smile. "On Earth, we often say those are the same thing." Medical staff rushed in, helping Kale back to the bed and administering stronger pain medication. As consciousness began to fade, he heard Lyra giving orders to the security team. "Maximum containment protocols for the prisoners. I want biometric identification and background checks. And double the guard on the prototype. Phantom Core doesn't give up after 1 failed attempt." Phantom Core. The name triggered something in Kale's memory. News reports about a notorious group of technology thieves, experts in replicating restricted tech and selling it to the highest bidder. As darkness claimed him, Kale realized he had stumbled into something far more complex than a simple bus malfunction. And somehow, he suspected his involvement was just beginning. When Kale awoke again, the medical facility was calm, the earlier chaos seemingly resolved. His body still ached, but the edge had dulled, either from healing or better medication. Experimentally, he flexed his arm, pleased to find he could move without excruciating pain. "The doctors estimate another 48 hours before you're mobile," said a familiar voice. Kale turned to see Commander Lyra Dex, seated beside his bed, reviewing data on a holographic display. She looked tired, but alert. "What happened with the attackers?" he asked. "Phantom Core operatives, as suspected. Elite team, well-equipped." She dismissed the holographic display with a gesture. "We're holding them in a secure facility, but they haven't revealed much. Their neural implants self-destructed before we could extract any useful data." "And the container they were after?" Lyra hesitated, weighing how much to reveal. "Classified technology. Something that shouldn't have been on a public transport in the first place." "That's not an answer," Kale said flatly. "It's the only one you're cleared to receive." She studied him intently. "Though that could change. Your actions during both incidents have been noteworthy." "Meaning?" "Meaning I'm reassessing my initial suspicions about your involvement." She leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, Rourke, what exactly are you doing on Tefria? Your exhibition tour ended 2 weeks ago, yet you've remained." Kale shrugged, then winced at the pain the movement caused. "Sightseeing, thinking about what comes next." "After your competitive failure?" At his surprised look, she continued. "Yes. I researched you thoroughly. Former champion. Favored to win the Galactic Championship. Suffered a catastrophic failure during your final lift. Since then, you've been touring, demonstrating Terran strength to fascinated aliens." Her tone made the activity sound vaguely pathetic. "It pays the bills," Kale replied defensively. "It wastes your potential." Lyra's directness was startling. "What you did yesterday, holding that bus, protecting those passengers, that wasn't the act of someone content to be a sideshow attraction." Before Kale could respond, the door slid open, and a medical technician entered with a hovering tray of equipment. Time for your next treatment. Terran, the technician announced cheerfully. Commander, I must ask you to step outside. This procedure requires sterile conditions. Lyra nodded and rose. We'll continue this conversation later. Rourke, consider what I've said. As she exited, the technician began arranging instruments on the tray. How's the pain level today? Scale of 1 to 10? About a 6, Cale replied, watching the technician's methodical movements. Something felt off about the way they handled the equipment. Slightly hesitant, as if unfamiliar with the procedure. We'll soon fix that, the technician said, preparing an injector with a pale blue liquid. This new formula should accelerate your recovery significantly. Cale's instincts, honed by years of competitive sports, where the smallest details could mean the difference between victory and defeat, sent warning signals flaring through his mind. I don't recall my doctor mentioning a new formula, he said casually, tensing his muscles despite the pain. Dr. Naren was quite specific about my treatment protocol. The technician froze for just a fraction of a second, barely noticeable. But to Cale, it might as well have been a blaring alarm. Dr. Naren authorized the change this morning. The technician recovered smoothly. It's a standard Terran-compatible regenerative compound. Cale noticed another detail. The technician's hands. Tafrians had a distinctive pattern of capillaries, visible beneath their skin, creating subtle whorls across their hands. This technician's hands were too uniform in coloration. Before we start, Cale said, stalling, could you check with Dr. Naren directly? I've had some bad reactions to medications in the past. The technician's smile remained fixed. That won't be necessary, I assure you. I insist, Cale interrupted, his voice hardening. Call Dr. Naren now. The technician's expression changed, the friendly demeanor dropping away like a discarded mask. In one fluid motion, they produced a small weapon from beneath the medical tray. Such keen observational skills for a muscle-bound Terran, they said, voice now missing the Tafrian accent. Unfortunately, that only makes you more valuable to us. Cale assessed his options. His injuries limited his mobility, but his arms were functioning well enough. The false technician was standing just within reach. Phantom core, I presume? Cale asked, subtly adjusting his position on the bed. Very good. Now, this can proceed in 2 ways. You can receive this injection willingly. It's not lethal, merely a paralytic to facilitate your transport. Or I can use this. They gestured with the small weapon. Neural disruptor. Extremely painful and potentially damaging to your rather impressive physiology. Cale pretended to consider. What exactly do you want with me? Your genetic profile, primarily. The way you held that bus defies current understanding of humanoid biomechanics. Such strength could be replicated, enhanced, and applied to our operative program. While the false technician spoke, Cale's hand slowly moved beneath the sheet, finding the metal rail of the hospital bed. With careful pressure, he began to bend it, creating a makeshift weapon. And if I refuse? As I said, the technician never finished the sentence. With explosive speed that belied his injured state, Cale yanked the bent metal rail free and hurled it like a spear. It struck the neural disruptor with pinpoint accuracy, knocking the weapon from the attacker's hand. The false technician reacted with impressive speed, drawing a secondary weapon. But Cale was already moving, ignoring the pain that tore through his abused muscles. He lunged forward, catching the attacker's wrist before they could aim. What followed was a brief, brutal struggle. The attacker had enhanced reflexes and combat training, but Cale had raw power and the desperate strength of someone fighting for their life. With a final surge of effort, he slammed the false technician against the wall, pinning them there with one massive arm across their throat. Who else is coming? Cale demanded, applying just enough pressure to make breathing difficult. The attacker's only response was a mocking smile. Then, to Cale's horror, their pupils dilated unnaturally, and foam began to form at the corners of their mouth. Suicide protocol activated, they gasped. You're too late. Terran, the prototype is already... Their body went rigid, then limp, dead within seconds. Cale released the corpse, staggering back in shock. He triggered the emergency call button, then collapsed onto the bed, his reserves of strength finally depleted. When security forces burst in moments later, they found the dead Phantom Corps operative, and Cale barely conscious. As darkness closed in again, his last thought was of the mysterious prototype. What was it? And why were people willing to die for it? Commander Lyra Dex stood at the observation window, watching as medical staff worked to stabilize Cale Rourke. His condition had deteriorated rapidly after the attack. The strain of combat had reopened internal injuries and taxed his already depleted system. "He should be dead twice over," remarked Dr. Naren, joining her at the window. "Once from holding that bus, and again from engaging an augmented operative in his weakened state. His physiology is remarkable." "Remarkable enough to explain Phantom Corps' interest?" Lyra asked. "Possibly. His muscle fiber density is unlike anything in our database. If they could replicate it for their operatives..." The doctor left the implications hanging. Lyra's communication device chimed with a priority alert. She reviewed the message, her expression darkening. "The prototype is gone," she said. "The containment unit in the secure vault was breached less than 10 minutes ago. The false technician was just a distraction." "What exactly was this prototype?" Dr. Naren asked. "Classified," Lyra replied automatically, then reconsidered. "But since Phantom Corps now has it, it's a molecular replication system. It can scan any technology and create a perfect duplicate, bypassing all security protocols and ownership verification." "Gods," the doctor whispered. "With that, they could replicate any weapon, any security system, any restricted technology," Lyra finished, "and sell the duplicates to whoever has the credits. The balance of power across the sector could shift overnight." She watched Cale's unconscious form, making a decision. "Prepare him for transfer. We're moving him to a secure facility once he's stable." "He needs at least 24 hours before..." "We don't have 24 hours. Phantom Corps wants him, and they've proven they can infiltrate this facility. We move him as soon as possible." As the doctor reluctantly agreed, Lyra turned her attention to a secure channel on her communication device. This situation had escalated beyond her authority. She needed to contact Central Command and request additional resources. But first, she had a theory to investigate. The timing of the bus incident, the prototype's presence, Phantom Corps' interest in both the technology and the Terran. It all suggested coordination beyond coincidence. She pulled up the passenger manifest for the Skyline bus. Among the names, one stood out, a human female who had identified herself as a tourist, but whose behavior during the incident had marked her as something else. Lyra ran a deeper background check, bypassing the standard identity verification. The results confirmed her suspicion. The woman, ostensibly named Maya Lin, was actually an Earth intelligence operative, which meant Earth knew about the prototype, which meant the accident might have been an Earth intelligence operation interrupted by Phantom Corps, with Cale Rourke caught in the middle. The political implications were staggering. If Earth was attempting to steal Tafrian technology while Phantom Corps was doing the same, Lyra closed the file. The situation had just become exponentially more complicated, and somehow, she suspected the injured Terran Powerlifter would be central to resolving it. Cale dreamed of falling. Not his own fall, but the bus, plummeting toward the glowing canyon below. In the dream, his arms couldn't support the weight. He watched helplessly as the vehicle crashed, the screams of passengers cutting off abruptly on impact. He woke with a gasp, heart pounding. The medical facility was quiet. The lighting dimmed to simulate night. His body felt stronger, the pain reduced to a dull background ache. Whatever treatment they'd given him was working rapidly. The nightmare is common among those who have experienced trauma, said a soft voice from the shadows. Kale turned his head, surprised to find one of the Eridonians. Velen, he thought, hovering near his bed. "How did you get in here?" he asked, voice rough from sleep. "Security is supposed to be tight. Eridonians have certain abilities that your scanning systems cannot detect." Velen moved closer, their gelatinous body glowing faintly in the darkness. "I came to warn you." "About what?" "The device Phantom Core stole. Do you know what it is?" Kale shook his head. "Some kind of replication technology. I gathered." "It is far more than that." Velen's voice took on an urgent quality. "It was developed using principles from my people's research that was shared with Defria under strict limitations. They violated those limitations." "What does it actually do?" Kale pressed. "It doesn't merely replicate technology. It evolves it." Velen's compound eyes pulsed with agitation. "Each replication introduces subtle improvements based on quantum probability calculations. Technology that passes through multiple generations of replication becomes more advanced than its original creators could have conceived." Kale processed this information. "So if Phantom Core replicates weapons, after several generations, they would have weapons beyond anything currently existing in the Confederation. The same applies to shield technology, propulsion systems, anything they replicate." "Why are you telling me this?" Kale asked, suspicious. "Shouldn't you be talking to Commander Dex?" "Commander Dex represents Tafrian interests, which may not align with galactic security. And there is another reason." Velen hesitated. "The technology requires a biological component to function at full capacity, a living template with exceptional adaptive qualities." Understanding dawned on Kale. "They want me, my genetic material or something?" "Your demonstration of physical adaptation, exceeding theoretical limits of your species, makes you an ideal template." Velen's voice softened. "I believe they orchestrated the bus incident specifically to identify such a template. The presence of the prototype and your placement on that specific transport were not coincidental." The implications hit Kale like a physical blow. "You're saying I was set up? That bus was meant to fail so someone could see if I'd save it?" "The probability calculations support this hypothesis." Velen moved toward the door. "You should know that both Phantom Core and elements within Tafrian security would consider you a valuable asset in controlling this technology. Trust no one completely." "Why should I trust you?" Kale challenged. "You shouldn't," Velen replied simply. "Verify everything I've told you, but do so quickly. They will be moving you soon, and that transfer presents an opportunity for whoever wishes to acquire you." With those ominous words, the Eridonian seemed to fade into the shadows, leaving Kale alone with troubling new questions. He didn't have long to consider them. Less than an hour later, Dr. Naren arrived with a medical team. "We're transferring you to a secure facility," the doctor explained, preparing Kale for transport. "Commander Dex's orders." "Where exactly are we going?" Kale asked, alert for any signs of deception after Velen's warning. "The high-security medical wing at Central Command. You'll be safer there." As they transferred him to a hover stretcher, Kale assessed his physical condition. The pain had receded significantly. He could move with only moderate discomfort. If necessary, he could probably walk, maybe even run. Certainly fight. They moved through the corridors of the medical facility toward a loading bay where an armored medical transport waited. Commander Dex herself stood by the vehicle, accompanied by 4 heavily armed security officers. "Status?" she asked Dr. Naren. "Stable and recovering rapidly. Terran physiology continues to surprise us." Lyra nodded, then addressed Kale directly. "We have reason to believe Phantom Core will attempt to intercept this transfer. The vehicle is armored and shielded, but if anything happens, stay down and let my team handle it." Kale studied her expression, looking for any hint of deception. Her concern seemed genuine, but after Velen's warning, He couldn't be certain of anyone's motives. "What exactly is happening here, Commander?" he asked, as they loaded him into the transport. "First, I'm a suspect. Then I'm attacked by fake medical staff. Now I'm being rushed to a secure facility. I think I deserve some answers." Lyra hesitated, then nodded to the medical team, dismissing them. Once they were alone in the transport bay, she spoke in a low voice. "The technology stolen from that bus is more dangerous than you can imagine. And yes, Phantom Core appears interested in you as well as the prototype. Beyond that, I can't say more until we reach secure space." It wasn't a complete answer, but it aligned with what Velen had told him. Kale decided to play along for now, while remaining vigilant. The loading process completed, and the transport's engines hummed to life. Lyra took a seat opposite Kale, while her security team positioned themselves strategically throughout the vehicle. With a gentle lurch, they moved out into the Tafrian night. Through the transport's small windows, Kale caught glimpses of Neo Athena's nighttime splendor. Towers glittering with lights, skyways threaded with moving vehicles, the distant glow of the light canyons. Under different circumstances, he might have appreciated the beauty. They had been traveling for approximately 10 minutes when the first explosion hit. The transport rocked violently, throwing one of the security officers against the wall. Warning lights flashed as the vehicle's shields absorbed the impact. "Ambush!" called the driver from the front compartment. "3 vehicles on approach, heavily armed." Commander Dex was immediately in motion, weapon drawn. "Evasive maneuvers, Security Protocol 7. The transport lurched as the driver executed a sharp turn, nearly throwing Kale from his stretcher. He unstrapped himself, ignoring the protest from his healing muscles. If they were under attack, he wasn't going to lie helplessly, waiting for rescue. A second explosion, more powerful than the first, caused the transport to skid sideways. The shields flickered ominously. "Shields at 40%, reported the driver. "One more hit like that and we're exposed." Through the window, Kale saw their attackers, sleek, matte black vehicles with what appeared to be mounted weapons. Phantom Core, he presumed. They were being herded away from the main transit routes, toward a less populated area. "They're forcing us toward the industrial district," Lyra confirmed his observation. "Less security, more places to disappear." A third blast struck the rear of the transport, and this time the shields failed completely. The impact sent the vehicle spinning, crashing against a safety barrier on the elevated roadway. The rear doors buckled, but held. "Everyone out!" Lyra commanded. "We need to reach cover before they close in." The security team moved with practiced efficiency, securing the immediate area around the damaged transport. Kale pulled himself to his feet, testing his strength. The pain was manageable. Adrenaline helped, but he was far from full capacity. Lyra assessed him with a critical eye. "Can you move?" "I'll manage," he replied grimly. They exited the transport, finding themselves on an elevated section of roadway connecting 2 industrial complexes. Below, the sheer drop led to another level of the city, not as deep as the Light Canyon, but certainly fatal if one fell. The security team formed a protective perimeter as they moved toward the nearest building, a manufacturing facility that appeared closed for the night cycle. Before they could reach it, plasma fire erupted from both ends of the roadway. "They've cut us off!" shouted one of the security officers, returning fire. Kale assessed the situation rapidly. They were trapped on the roadway, exposed from multiple angles. The damaged transport offered minimal cover, and their attackers were closing in from both directions. "The barrier," he said to Lyra, pointing to the safety rail that ran along the edge of the roadway. "If we could break through, there's a maintenance platform about 10 meters down. It might connect to the building's service entrance." Lyra followed his gaze, quickly confirming his observation. "Good eye. But that barrier is reinforced durasteel. We don't have explosives powerful enough to breach it." Kale gave her a grim smile. "We don't need explosives." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "Your injuries are less important than all of us dying here, he finished. Cover me. Before she could protest further, Kale moved toward the barrier, keeping low to avoid the plasma fire that increasingly saturated the area. The security team, recognizing his intent, intensified their covering fire to draw attention away from him. Reaching the barrier, Kale took a deep breath, centering himself as he had done countless times before major lifts in competition. He placed his hands on the Durasteel rail, feeling its solidity, calculating the force needed. Then, with a roar that was equal parts pain and determination, he pulled. The metal groaned in protest. Kyle's muscles screamed as newly healed tissue threatened to tear again, but he persisted, channeling every ounce of his strength into the task. With a shriek of yielding metal, a section of the barrier gave way, creating an opening large enough for a person to pass through. "Now!" he shouted to Lyra, his voice strained with effort. She directed her team toward the opening, providing covering fire as they slipped through one by one. Kale held the bent metal, widening the gap to ensure everyone could pass safely. As the last security officer made it through, a plasma bolt struck dangerously close to Kale's position. He looked up to see one of the Phantom Core vehicles had advanced to within 50 meters, its weapons trained directly on him. There was no time for careful movement. With the last of his strength, Kale hurled himself through the opening, just as a plasma bolt struck where he had been standing. He landed heavily on the maintenance platform below, the impact sending fresh waves of pain through his battered body. Lyra helped him to his feet. That was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. "You keep saying that," Kale managed through gritted teeth. "Maybe it's both." They moved quickly along the maintenance platform, following it to a service entrance that, fortunately, yielded to Commander Dex's security override. Once inside the manufacturing facility, they had a moment to regroup. "Status report," Lyra demanded of her team. "2 wounded. Nothing critical," replied the senior officer. "Communications are being jammed. We can't contact Central Command for backup." "They came prepared," Lyra said grimly. "This wasn't an opportunistic attack. They knew our route and timing." The implication hung in the air. They had a traitor in their midst, or Phantom Core had infiltrated Tafrian security systems more deeply than anyone had realized. Kale leaned against a wall, taking stock of his condition. The exertion had reopened some of his injuries. He could feel warm blood soaking through his medical garments. But he was still functional, still able to fight if necessary. "What's the plan, Commander?" he asked. Lyra considered their options. "This facility should have an emergency communication system not connected to the main network. If we can reach the central control room, we might be able to get a message out. And if we can't, then we keep moving until we find a way out of the jamming field." She checked her weapons charge. "They want you alive, Rourke. That gives us an advantage." "Me specifically, or any Terran?" Kale asked, thinking of Velen's warning. Lyra gave him a sharp look. "What do you know?" "Only what I've pieced together. The prototype needs a biological template with exceptional adaptive qualities. Apparently, lifting a bus qualifies me." "Who told you that?" Her voice was dangerously quiet. "Does it matter? Is it true?" After a tense moment, she nodded. "Yes. The replication system was designed to evolve technology by integrating biological adaptation principles. A living template with demonstrated physical capability beyond normal parameters would accelerate the process exponentially. So I wasn't randomly on that bus," Kyle stated, rather than asked. "Someone arranged for me to be there when it malfunctioned." "That's my current theory," Lyra admitted. "Though whether it was Phantom Core or someone else remains unclear." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of an explosion from the direction they had entered. Phantom Core was breaking in. "We need to move," Lyra ordered. "Central control should be 3 levels up." They proceeded through the darkened facility, guided by emergency lighting and the security team's knowledge of standard industrial layouts. Kale moved as quietly as his size allowed, alert for any sign of pursuit. As they climbed to the second level, a faint sound caught his attention, a metallic scraping too rhythmic to be random. He held up a hand, signaling the others to stop. "Something's moving in the ventilation system," he whispered. No sooner had the words left his mouth than the ceiling panels above them exploded outward. Small, spherical devices dropped into their midst. Not explosives, but something worse. "Paralytic gas dispersers!" Lyra shouted. "Don't breathe!" But it was too late. The devices activated instantly, releasing a fine mist that penetrated even the security team's protective gear. One by one, they collapsed, muscles seizing. Kale felt the effects immediately, a tingling numbness spreading from his extremities inward. Fighting the paralysis through sheer willpower, he lunged toward Lyra, who was still on her feet but clearly struggling. "Run!" she gasped. "They want you, not us." Before he could respond, dark figures dropped from the ceiling opening, Phantom Corps operatives in full environmental suits. They moved with mechanical precision, securing the fallen security team with restraints, despite their paralyzed state. Kale's legs gave out, sending him crashing to his knees. Still, he fought the paralytic, refusing to surrender to its effects. With tremendous effort, he pushed himself back to his feet, staggering toward the nearest exit. An operative moved to intercept him, weapon raised. "Stand down, Terran. You cannot escape." "Watch me," Kale growled. Summoning the last reserves of his strength, he charged the operative, surprising them with his ability to move despite the paralytic. The collision sent them both crashing through a doorway into an adjoining manufacturing area, filled with heavy equipment. As they grappled, Kale felt the paralytic's effects intensifying. His movements became sluggish, his coordination failing. The operative, protected by their environmental suit, suffered no such handicap. A brutal blow to Kale's midsection drove the air from his lungs. As he gasped involuntarily, he inhaled more of the lingering paralytic gas. Darkness crept in at the edges of his vision. The operative stood over him, triumphant. "Impressive resistance, but futile. You are the final component we need." Through dimming consciousness, Kale saw more operatives entering the room, securing the area. Among them was a figure that moved differently, more fluid, more natural. As this figure approached, the others stepped aside deferentially. "So this is the Terran specimen," said a voice that, despite electronic distortion, carried unmistakable authority. "Secure him for transport, and make sure he stays alive this time." As consciousness slipped away, Kale's last thought was of the bus passengers he had saved, how their fear had turned to wonder, how for one brief moment his strength had meant something more than winning medals or impressing audiences. Now that same strength had made him a target, a specimen, a component in someone else's machine. The irony was not lost on him as darkness claimed him completely. When Kale regained consciousness, he found himself in a sterile chamber that hummed with unseen machinery. He was secured to an examination table by restraints that, despite their thin appearance, resisted even his considerable strength. Medical equipment surrounded him, monitoring his vital signs and collecting data. His body ached dully, the pain of his injuries compounded by the lingering effects of the paralytic gas. But his mind was clear, and with clarity came anger at being used, manipulated, treated like a specimen rather than a person. The chamber door slid open, admitting a slender figure in an environmental suit, less tactical than those worn by the operatives who had captured him. As the figure approached, they removed their helmet, revealing a face that sent a jolt of surprise through Kale. It was the woman from the bus, the one who had confronted the Tafrian officials about their mysterious cargo. The one Commander Dex had identified as Earth intelligence. "Hello, Kyle," she said, her voice calm and professional. "I'm Agent Stella Kwan, Earth Intelligence Service." Kyle strained against his restraints. You're with Phantom Core? No. She set her helmet aside. Phantom Core is currently under the impression that they've successfully captured you. In reality, my team intercepted their transport and brought you here. And where is here, exactly? A secure Earth intelligence facility beneath Neo Athena. She checked one of the monitoring devices. Your recovery rate is remarkable, even by elite Terran standards. Why am I restrained if I'm among friends? Kale demanded. Precautionary, Stella replied. The paralytic they used has been known to cause violent disorientation upon recovery. The restraints will be removed once we're certain you're stable. It was a reasonable explanation, but Kale's instincts, heightened by recent events, remained suspicious. What does Earth intelligence want with me? The same thing everyone seems to want. To understand how you did what you did. She moved to a console, bringing up a holographic display of what appeared to be biological data. Your performance during the bus incident exceeded theoretical limits for human physiology by approximately 340%. Even accounting for your elite athletic status, that should have been impossible. I did what needed to be done, Kale said simply. Anyone in my position would have tried. Tried? Yes. Succeeded? No. Stella studied the data with genuine fascination. We've analyzed the footage frame by frame. The bus weighed 15.7 metric tons with passengers. The stress forces on your skeletal structure should have caused catastrophic collapse within seconds. Instead, you not only supported the weight but managed to walk with it. Kale's patience was wearing thin. I'm not interested in being anyone's research subject. Release me. Soon, she promised. But first, you need to understand what's happening. The prototype that was on that bus, the replication system, it's more dangerous than you realize. So I've been told, by Commander Dex, by an Eridonian named Velen, and now by you. Everyone's very concerned about this technology, yet no one seems concerned about how it came to be on a public transport in the first place. Stella's expression shifted slightly, a micro-expression of discomfort that Kale, trained to observe the smallest details of form and movement, didn't miss. The placement of the prototype on that bus was a security failure, she said carefully. One that Tafrian authorities are investigating. A security failure? Or a deliberate test? Kale challenged. Was that bus meant to fail? Was I meant to be there to catch it? Stella didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. Who arranged it? Kale pressed. Phantom Core? Tafrian Security? Or Earth Intelligence? The situation is more complex than you understand. She evaded. Multiple parties have interest in the replication technology. Some want to control it, others to destroy it. The incident served various agendas simultaneously. And where do I fit in your agenda, Agent Kwan? Again, that slight hesitation. Earth intelligence is concerned about the balance of power in the Galactic Confederation. If any single entity, whether it's Phantom Core or the Tafrian government, gains exclusive control of evolving replication technology, it could destabilize that balance. You still haven't answered my question. Stella sighed, making a decision. Your genetic material, specifically the adaptive properties demonstrated during the bus incident, could be used to neutralize the prototype. We can develop a counteragent that prevents the replication system from evolving beyond certain parameters. And you need me alive and cooperative for that? Precisely. She approached the restraint controls. Which is why I'm going to release you now, as a demonstration of good faith. The restraints retracted, allowing Kale to sit up. He rubbed his wrists, testing his strength. The paralytic's effects had mostly faded, and his injuries were healing rapidly. He could fight if necessary, escape if possible. What happens now? He asked, remaining seated for the moment. Now, we move you to a more comfortable facility, where our specialists can work with you to develop the counteragent. Stella retrieved a small case from a nearby shelf. These are your personal effects from the medical facility. You should change before we transport you." As Kale took the case, a distant explosion shook the room, causing the lights to flicker. Alarm systems activated immediately, bathing the chamber in pulsing red light. "What's happening?" he demanded. Stella's hand went to her communication device. "Security breach. Intruders in the main access corridor." "Phantom Corps? Or Tafrian forces?" she replied grimly. "Either way, we need to move. There's an emergency exit through the lab next door." Kale quickly changed into his own clothes, simple travel attire that nonetheless felt infinitely better than the medical garments. As he dressed, he noted the return of his full range of motion. Whatever treatment they had given him was remarkably effective. Stella led him through a connecting door into a laboratory filled with advanced equipment. Various screens displayed molecular structures and simulation models of what he assumed was the replication technology. At the far end was another door marked with emergency symbols. Before they could reach it, that door burst inward with explosive force. Through the smoke and debris stepped a familiar figure, Commander Lyra Dex, accompanied by a full tactical team in Tafrian security armor. "Agent Kwan," Lyra said coldly, weapon trained on Stella. "By authority of the Tafrian High Command, you and all Earth intelligence personnel are under arrest for technology theft, espionage, and violation of sovereignty agreements." Stella's hand moved subtly toward a concealed weapon. "This facility is protected under Diplomatic Accord 17. Your intrusion constitutes an act of aggression against Earth. The accord was voided the moment you abducted a witness in Tafrian protective custody," Lyra countered. "Surrender now." Kale found himself caught between the two women, both armed, both deadly serious. "I'm getting tired of being treated like property to be stolen," he said, voice hard with suppressed anger. "Would one of you like to explain what's really happening here?" "Earth intelligence orchestrated the bus incident," Lyra stated. "They arranged for the prototype to be on that transport, knowing it would malfunction near the Light Canyon. They wanted to test both the technology and potential templates under crisis conditions." "That's not true," Stella insisted. "We intercepted intelligence that Phantom Corps planned to hijack the transport. We were trying to prevent the theft." "By placing your own agent on board?" Lyra challenged. "By ensuring a specific Terran powerlifter with exceptional physical capabilities was also a passenger?" The accusation hung in the air. Kale looked at Stella, searching for denial, but found only calculated silence. "Both of you used me," he realized. Earth wanted the prototype and a template. Tafria wanted to see what the technology could do under stress conditions. And Phantom Corps. What do they really want? "Power," Lyra answered. "With the replication technology and a suitable biological template, they could create weapons and defenses beyond anything currently existing. They could sell to the highest bidder, destabilize entire sectors." Another explosion, closer this time, rocked the facility. Alarm systems screamed new warnings. "Phantom Corps has breached the secondary perimeter," reported one of Lyra's tactical team. "Multiple hostiles, heavily armed." The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Kale made a decision. "I'm not going with either of you," he declared. "Not until I know the full truth." "There's no time for this," Stella insisted. "Phantom Corps will kill everyone here to get what they want." "For once, we agree," Lyra said grimly. "Rourke, you need protection that only official channels can provide." Kale spotted a third exit, a maintenance access in the corner of the lab, partially hidden behind equipment. Neither Lyra nor Stella seemed to have noticed it. "I'll protect myself," he stated firmly, then moved with surprising speed for someone of his size. Before either woman could react, Kale sprinted to the maintenance access, tore the reinforced door from its frame with one powerful pull, and disappeared into the narrow corridor beyond. Behind him, he heard shouted orders and the sound of pursuit, but he had the advantage of surprise and determination. The corridor led to a service lift, which he forced open with brute strength when the call button failed to respond. Looking down the shaft, he saw it was a straight drop of perhaps 30 meters to the bottom level. For most people, it would be a daunting obstacle. For Cale, whose sport routinely involved calculating mass, force, and structural integrity, it was a calculated risk. Using the lift cables as handholds, he began to descend rapidly, ignoring the burning in his palms as friction heated the metal. Above, he heard the sounds of conflict, energy weapons discharging, shouted commands, the distinctive whine of Phantom Corps' advanced weaponry joining the chaos. 3 factions, all fighting over him and the prototype, all willing to risk lives for control of technology that should probably have never been created. As he reached the bottom of the shaft, a new resolution formed in Cale's mind. He wouldn't be anyone's specimen or template, but he also couldn't allow the replication technology to fall into the wrong hands, which, at this point, seemed to be any hands. He needed allies he could trust, information that wasn't filtered through agency agendas, and a plan that didn't involve becoming a pawn in someone else's game. And he knew just where to start looking. The lowest level of the facility appeared to be a storage area, dimly lit and seemingly unoccupied. Kyle moved cautiously between rows of crated equipment, listening for any sign of pursuit. The sounds of conflict above had become more distant, suggesting the fighting remained concentrated on the upper levels. He needed to find a way out. But first, he needed information. Spotting a computer terminal near what appeared to be a loading dock, he approached it cautiously. The system was active but locked. "Need assistance?" asked a familiar voice from the shadows. Kyle spun, dropping into a defensive stance, only to find Etri the Eridonian hovering nearby, their bioluminescent patches dimmed to near invisibility. "How did you get in here?" Cale demanded. "The same way I entered your medical room," Etri replied. "Eridonians have certain perceptual abilities that allow us to move undetected when necessary, a skill we rarely advertise." "Why are you here?" "Vilon and I share a consciousness link, as is common among our kind. When they spoke with you, I perceived the information exchanged." Etri moved closer to the terminal. "The situation has become untenable. The replication technology was developed using principles from our research that was explicitly provided with limitations that have been ignored. The Eridonian interfaced with the terminal using a small device from their hovering disk. The system unlocked immediately." "Eridonian encryption keys are remarkably effective," Etri commented mildly. "Now, what information do you seek?" "The truth about the bus incident," Cale said, "and the location of the prototype." Etri manipulated the terminal with practiced ease. "According to these files, the incident was indeed orchestrated, but not solely by Earth intelligence or Tafrian security. It was a joint operation compromised by a Phantom Corps infiltrator within Tafrian Security's Division 7. The officials on the bus, Cale realized. 1 was legitimate. 2 were replacements. 1 Phantom Corps, 1 Earth intelligence. Neither knew about the other. Etri continued searching. The prototype was supposed to be transported in a specialized containment unit that would have prevented detection. The infiltrator ensured it was placed in standard containment instead, allowing Phantom Corps to track it. And me? Was I deliberately placed on that transport? Etri hesitated. Yes. Your physical capabilities had been identified as potentially suitable for template integration. The incident was designed to test those capabilities under extreme stress. The confirmation of his suspicions sent a wave of cold anger through Cale. Who authorized using me as a test subject without my knowledge or consent? A joint directive signed by representatives from both Earth Intelligence and Tafrian Security. Etri brought up the document, displaying the signatures, including Commander Dex and Agent Kwan. Cale's hands clenched into fists, the muscles of his forearms standing out like cables. And the prototype? Where is it now? According to the most recent security update, It was moved to a secure vault beneath the Tafrian Central Command facility, after being recovered from Phantom Corps' failed attempt. Etri glanced at Kale. However, given the infiltration already demonstrated, I question whether it remains secure. So do I, Kale agreed grimly. Is there a way out of here that doesn't involve going back upstairs? The loading dock has an emergency exit that connects to the city's maintenance tunnels. Etri gestured toward a reinforced door at the far end of the area. It will be locked down due to the security breach, but perhaps your unique abilities could overcome that obstacle. Kale moved to the indicated door. As expected, it was sealed with a heavy security lock, the kind designed to withstand explosives or energy weapons. But it wasn't designed to withstand raw Terran strength, amplified by righteous anger. Bracing himself, Kale gripped the seam where the door met its frame. With a deep breath, he pulled, channeling all his power into the movement. Metal groaned, then shrieked as the locking mechanism began to give way. Etri watched with undisguised fascination. Truly remarkable biomechanical efficiency. You're exceeding the theoretical yield point of that alloy by at least 40%. With a final heave, Kale tore the door open, bending the metal frame enough to create a passage. Beyond lay a dimly lit tunnel, marked with directional indicators in Tafrian script. This will lead to the central maintenance hub, Etri explained, hovering through the opening. From there, we can access multiple sectors of the city without using the monitored transit systems. We? Kale questioned, following the Eridonian into the tunnel. I appreciate the help, but I'm not dragging you into this mess. I am already involved, Etri replied simply. The technology in question utilizes principles that my people shared in good faith. Its misuse represents a violation of that trust. Besides, you require guidance in a city you do not know, and I require your unique physical capabilities to resolve this situation. Kale couldn't argue with the logic. Fine. Where are we going? First, to a secure location where we can contact Velen. They have been gathering information on Phantom Corps' operations in Neo-Athena. They moved quickly through the maintenance tunnels, encountering no resistance. Occasionally, distant alarms suggested the conflict continued in the Earth intelligence facility above. But down here, all was eerily quiet. After nearly 30 minutes of navigating the labyrinthine tunnels, they emerged into what appeared to be an abandoned storage facility. Ancient crates covered in dust suggested it hadn't been used in years. Velen will meet us here, Etri announced, activating a small communication device. This location is shielded from standard scanning technology. While they waited, Kale paced the facility, his mind processing everything he had learned. The betrayal stung deeper than he had expected. To be used as an unwitting test subject, to have his life endangered without his knowledge or consent, it violated something fundamental in his understanding of justice. You are troubled, Etri observed. Beyond the immediate danger? I'm a person, not a specimen, Kale replied, his voice tight with controlled anger. My whole life, I've worked to perfect my strength, to push the boundaries of what's possible. I did it for the challenge, for the sport. Now I find out that strength makes me a target, a resource to be exploited. Perhaps, Etri suggested gently, it also makes you uniquely capable of preventing that exploitation. Before Kale could respond, a section of wall shimmered and seemed to fold inward, revealing Velen floating through what had appeared to be solid matter. Perceptual distortion field, Etri explained, noting Kale's startled expression. A passive defense mechanism of our species. The situation has escalated, Velen announced without preamble. Phantom Corps has launched simultaneous attacks on both Tafrian Central Command and the Earth Intelligence Facility. They are creating chaos to cover their true objective. The prototype, Kale surmised. Yes. And you. Velen produced a small, holographic projector, displaying a tactical map of Neo-Athena. Their primary strike team is moving toward Central Command's secure vault. They have insider assistance. Let me guess, Kale said bitterly. Someone from Tafrian Security Division 7. Correct. The same infiltrator who ensured the prototype was on that bus. Velen highlighted a section of the map. They will breach the vault within the hour. Once they have the prototype, they will seek to complete the integration with a suitable biological template. Me? Not necessarily, Etri interjected. Any being demonstrating exceptional adaptive capabilities could serve. You are merely the most obvious candidate after your public demonstration. So what's the plan? Kale asked. We can't exactly walk into Tafrian Central Command and ask to see their secure vault. Actually, Velen said, that is precisely what we will do. The plan, as Velen outlined it, was audacious, bordering on insane. Kale would present himself at Central Command, claiming to have escaped the Earth Intelligence Facility and seeking Tafrian protection. Given the current chaos and Commander Dex's known interest in him, he would likely be granted access and taken to a secure location, potentially near the vault itself. Meanwhile, the Eridonians would use their perceptual abilities to infiltrate the facility undetected. If Phantom Corps made their move while Kale was inside, he would be positioned to intervene. This is risky, Kale pointed out. What if Dex is the infiltrator? Unlikely, Etri replied. Our analysis of communication patterns suggests the infiltration is at a lower level, someone with access but not command authority. And if I'm detained immediately? Then we proceed to contingency measures, Velen said cryptically. But we believe your value as a potential template will ensure you are kept accessible rather than imprisoned. It wasn't a perfect plan, but given the circumstances, it was the best option available. Kyle agreed, though with significant reservations. They emerged from the abandoned facility onto a less trafficked street in Neo-Athena's industrial district. Emergency vehicles raced overhead, their sirens wailing as they converged on what must be the Earth Intelligence Facility. In the distance, a plume of smoke suggested the conflict had escalated to property damage. Central Command is 2 sectors east, Velen instructed. We will shadow you, but remain undetected. If you encounter difficulty, use this. They handed Kale a small disc similar to their hovering platform. It will alert us. Kale tucked the disc into his pocket. How will I know if Phantom Corps makes their move? Trust your instincts, Etri advised. They have served you well thus far. With that, the Eridonians activated their perceptual distortion fields, seeming to fade into the background until Kale could no longer discern their presence. Alone, at least apparently, he set off toward Tafrian Central Command. The streets grew more crowded as he approached the governmental sector. Security checkpoints had been established at major intersections, with armed Tafrian officers scrutinizing everyone who passed. Kale made no attempt to avoid them. Being noticed was part of the plan. At the first checkpoint, he was immediately recognized. The Terran from the Skyline incident, one officer said to another. Commander Dex issued an alert for him. I need to speak with Commander Dex, Kale announced, allowing himself to be surrounded by security personnel. It's urgent. They escorted him with a mixture of caution and deference, clearly aware of both his potential importance and his demonstrated physical capabilities. Instead of restraining him, they simply formed a tight perimeter as they guided him toward the imposing structure of Central Command. The building was a marvel of Tafrian architecture, a spiraling tower of crystalline material that caught the light of the twin suns, refracting it into patterns that seemed to shift and flow across the surface. Under different circumstances, Kale might have appreciated its beauty. Inside, the security presence was overwhelming. The recent attacks had clearly put the facility on high alert. Kyle was escorted through multiple checkpoints, each more stringent than the last, until he reached a secure reception area deep within the building. Wait here, instructed the lead officer. Commander Dex has been notified of your arrival. Left alone in the sterile waiting area, Cale took the opportunity to assess his surroundings. The room had only one visible exit, but knowing Tafrian design preferences, there were likely hidden emergency exits as well. Security cameras monitored from multiple angles, their subtle movements tracking his position. He didn't have to wait long. The door slid open to reveal Commander Lyra Dex, her uniform slightly disheveled, suggesting she had come directly from some kind of operation. "Rourke," she said, her expression a mixture of relief and suspicion. "You're either very brave or very foolish to walk into Central Command voluntarily." "You keep saying that," Kyle replied evenly. "Maybe I'm just tired of being a pawn in everyone's game." Lyra gestured for him to follow her into a more private conference room. Once the door sealed behind them, she activated a security field that hummed softly, creating a bubble of privacy. "Earth intelligence is claiming we abducted you from their facility," she stated. "They're threatening diplomatic consequences." "I left of my own accord," Cale clarified. "After learning that both Earth and Tafria used me as an unwitting test subject during the bus incident." Lyra had the grace to look uncomfortable. "It wasn't my decision to keep you uninformed." "But you signed the authorization," Cale challenged. "I saw the document." A flash of genuine surprise crossed her face. "How did you—" She stopped herself, reassessing. "That's not important now. What matters is that Phantom Corps is making coordinated strikes across the city. We believe they're creating diversions to cover their primary objective. The prototype in your secure vault," Kyle finished for her. This time, Lyra's surprise was unmistakable. "You're remarkably well informed for someone who was unconscious in a medical facility until recently." "I've had help," Kyle said simply. "The question is, can I trust you, Commander? Because right now, I'm not inclined to trust anyone from Earth intelligence or Tafrian security." Lyra considered him for a long moment. "I can't undo the decision to use you in the test," she finally said. "But I can tell you it wasn't meant to endanger lives. The bus was supposed to experience a minor malfunction in a controlled location with multiple redundant safety systems. Something went wrong. The failure was catastrophic instead of minor, and the safety fields didn't activate." "Sabotage," Cale suggested. "Almost certainly. We've identified a probable infiltrator in Division 7, but haven't been able to make an arrest yet." She hesitated, then made a decision. "I need your help. Rourke. If Phantom Corps gets the prototype and a suitable biological template, the consequences could be devastating." "And I'm just supposed to trust you now? After everything that's happened?" "No," Lyra admitted. "Trust needs to be earned. So let me start by showing you exactly what we're dealing with." She deactivated the privacy field and led Cale deeper into the facility, through security checkpoints that required her biometric confirmation at every stage. They descended via a secure lift to a sub-level, marked only with a coded designation. "The prototype is housed in our most secure vault," Lyra explained, as they walked down a stark corridor, lined with armed guards. "Access is restricted to command-level personnel only." "Yet you believe Phantom Corps can breach it," Cale observed. "With inside help? Yes. Our infiltrator has been careful, but patterns suggest they have vault access codes." They reached a massive security door that looked impenetrable. Multiple locking mechanisms, scanner arrays, and what appeared to be energy shielding built into the structure itself. "This is as far as we go without special authorization," Lyra said. "The prototype is behind that door, along with our most sensitive technologies and research." As if on cue, alarms began to blare throughout the facility. Red emergency lighting replaced the standard illumination, and security panels along the corridor displayed warning messages. "Multiple breaches detected," announced an automated system. "Security protocols activated. All personnel to emergency stations." Lyra's communication device chimed urgently. She checked it, her expression darkening. "They're creating a diversion on the upper levels. Explosive devices detonated in 3 separate locations. While your forces are occupied with that, Kale surmised, they make their real move here. Exactly. Lyra drew her weapon, checking its charge. I've called for reinforcements, but they'll be delayed dealing with the explosions and potential casualties. Kale tensed, his senses heightened by the imminent threat. How many entrances to this section? 2. The lift we used and an emergency access at the far end of the corridor. No sooner had she spoken than the emergency access exploded inward, the reinforced door flying off its hinges from the force of the blast. Through the smoke emerged 4 figures in the now familiar matte black combat suits of Phantom Corps. Lyra reacted instantly, pushing Kale into a recessed alcove for cover while returning fire with remarkable precision. Her first shot caught one of the attackers in the faceplate, shattering it and dropping them where they stood. The remaining 3 spread out, using advanced tactical movement to minimize their exposure while laying down suppressing fire. They were well-trained and clearly familiar with the layout of the facility. They're moving to flank us, Lyra warned, her weapon's charge depleting rapidly as she maintained covering fire. We need to fall back to the secondary defense point. But retreat wasn't an option. Behind them, the vault door's locking mechanism had begun to cycle, the security lights changing from red to amber. Someone was opening it from the inside. The infiltrator, Kyle realized. They're already in the vault. Lyra cursed under her breath, dividing her attention between the advancing Phantom Corps operatives and the slowly opening vault door. If they get the prototype out of containment. She didn't need to finish the thought. Kale had already assessed the situation and made his decision. Against armed operatives with advanced weapons, even his strength wouldn't be enough in a frontal assault. But if he could create a distraction... Cover me, he said to Lyra. Then, before she could object, he burst from the alcove and charged, not toward the attackers, but toward the nearest structural support column. The column was reinforced durasteel, designed to withstand significant stress. But it wasn't designed to withstand Kale Rourke at his most determined. With a roar that echoed through the corridor, he slammed into the column with his full weight and strength behind the impact. The metal buckled, creating a deafening structural groan that momentarily distracted the Phantom Corps operatives. In that split second of diverted attention, Lyra took down a second attacker with a perfect headshot. Kale didn't stop. Using the momentum from the first impact, he spun and delivered a powerful kick to the damaged section of the column. More metal gave way, and warning creaks suggested the ceiling's structural integrity was compromised. The remaining attackers, recognizing the danger, redirected their fire toward Kale. Energy bolts sizzled past him, one grazing his shoulder with burning heat. But he was already moving again, this time directly toward them. The unexpected frontal assault caught them off guard. Most opponents would seek cover, not charge directly into plasma fire. Kale's speed, remarkable for his size, brought him within striking distance before they could adjust their aim. He seized the weapon of the nearest operative, crushing the barrel in his grip and using the attacker's momentum to throw them bodily into their companion. Both went down in a tangle of limbs. Meanwhile, the vault door had completed its opening cycle. Through the widening gap, Kale caught a glimpse of a figure in Tefrian security uniform, emerging with a containment unit, similar to the one from the bus. Lyra had seen it too. "Security Officer Merrick," she called out, weapon trained on the figure. "By order of command, stand down immediately." Instead of complying, Merrick activated something on his wrist device. Instantly, his Tafrian uniform shimmered and dissolved, replaced by the distinctive combat suit of Phantom Corps. "Too late, Commander," he said, voice distorted through his helmet. "The prototype is already configured for transport." He raised a compact weapon, unlike anything Kale had seen before. Sleeker, more advanced than standard Tafrian technology. When he fired, the energy pulse that emerged was a vivid purple rather than the standard blue of regulation weapons. Lyra dove for cover, but the pulse wasn't aimed at her. Instead, it struck the ceiling above Kyle, causing a cascade of debris to rain down. Kyle barely managed to avoid being crushed, rolling clear as chunks of ceiling crashed to the floor. The distraction gave Marek the opportunity to make a break for the emergency exit, the containment unit secured to his back. The two Phantom Core operatives Kale had disabled were recovering, providing covering fire to facilitate their comrades' escape. "Stop him!" Lyra shouted, her own weapon nearly depleted as she exchanged fire with the operatives. Kyle didn't need to be told twice. Ignoring the burning pain in his shoulder where the energy bolt had struck, he sprinted after Marek. The Phantom Core infiltrator was fast, but encumbered by the containment unit. Kyle gained ground with each stride. Reaching the emergency access, Marek triggered another explosive device, attempting to collapse the passage behind him. But Kale was too close. He lunged forward, tackling Marek just as the explosive detonated. The force of the blast sent them both tumbling through the damaged accessway into a secondary corridor beyond. The containment unit broke free from Marek's back, skidding across the floor to lodge against a wall. Both men scrambled to their feet. Marek, realizing he was physically outmatched, drew a secondary weapon, a neural disruptor, similar to the one the false technician had used in the medical facility. "Stand down, Terran," he ordered. "Your physiology may be impressive, but it's still vulnerable to neural disruption." Kale considered his options. The containment unit was several meters away, and Marek stood between him and it. A neural disruptor could incapacitate him instantly if it made contact. "Why does Phantom Core want this technology so badly?" he asked, playing for time while assessing potential approaches. "What's the end game?" "Balance of power," Marek replied, keeping the disruptor trained on Kale, while edging toward the containment unit. "For too long, the major powers have hoarded advanced technology, using regulation and restriction to maintain their dominance. The replication system will democratize that power." "By selling weapons to anyone with enough credits?" Kale challenged. "By ensuring no single entity can achieve technological supremacy." Marek had reached the containment unit and was securing it with one hand, while keeping the disruptor aimed at Kale. "The Confederation talks of peace while preparing for war. We're simply leveling the playing field." "Noble words for a group of thieves and saboteurs," Kale replied. "How many innocent people were on that bus you nearly sent into the Light Canyon?" Marek's helmet concealed his expression, but his voice hardened. "Calculated risk. The greater good sometimes requires sacrifice." "Not today," Kale declared, and charged. Marek fired the neural disruptor, the crackling energy beam slicing through the air toward Kale's chest. But Kale had anticipated this, dropping into a slide that carried him beneath the beam. Before Marek could adjust his aim, Kale was upon him. The Phantom Core operative fought with enhanced reflexes and combat training, landing several punishing blows despite Kale's superior strength. But Kale had spent his life mastering precise control of his powerful body. He weathered the assault, waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment came when Marek attempted a spinning kick aimed at Kale's head. Kale caught the leg mid-motion and, with a powerful twist, sent Marek crashing to the floor. The neural disruptor skittered away across the smooth surface. Marek reached for a backup weapon, but Kyle was faster. He pinned the operative with one massive hand, applying just enough pressure to immobilize without crushing. "It's over," he said firmly. "Not quite," Marek replied, and Kale felt a sharp sting in his side, a concealed injector that Marek had managed to deploy. Almost immediately, a numbing sensation began to spread from the injection site. Not complete paralysis, but enough to compromise Kale's motor control. His grip on Marek weakened involuntarily. Seizing the advantage, Marek broke free and scrambled toward the containment unit. Kale fought through the spreading numbness, forcing his increasingly unresponsive limbs to move. The injection hadn't been a full dose. Perhaps Marek had been saving it for later use, and only managed to deliver a partial amount. With tremendous effort, Kale lunged forward, catching Marek just as he reached the containment unit. They crashed into it together, the impact sending it sliding toward the edge of a ventilation shaft that had been exposed by the earlier explosion. Both men watched in horror as the containment unit teetered on the edge, then disappeared into the shaft. A distant crash echoed up from below, followed by ominous silence. "No!" Marek's anguished cry was genuine. "Do you realize what you've done?" Before Kale could respond, footsteps approached rapidly from the direction of the vault. Lyra appeared, weapon raised, flanked by security reinforcements who had finally arrived. "Secure the operative," she ordered, and her team moved in to restrain Marek, who offered no resistance, seemingly in shock at the loss of the prototype. Kale struggled to his feet, fighting the effects of the partial injection. "The containment unit fell down that shaft," he explained, pointing to the opening. "I don't know if it survived the impact." Lyra approached the shaft, peering down into its depths. "This connects to the lower maintenance level. It's at least a 50-meter drop." She activated her communication device. "Security team to maintenance level 4, Section C, Priority 1 retrieval operation." As security personnel secured the area and medical staff arrived to treat Kale's injuries, Lyra pulled him aside. "If the containment unit was breached in the fall," she said quietly, "the prototype could be irreparably damaged. That might be for the best. Or it could be functioning and unsecured in your maintenance tunnels," Kyle pointed out. "Either way, we need to find it." Lyra nodded. "A retrieval team is already on its way. But first, let's get that injection neutralized before it spreads further." As a medic administered a counteragent, Kale felt sensation returning to his extremities. The numbness receded, replaced by pins and needles as his nervous system reactivated. "Commander," called one of the security officers examining Marek. "You should see this." Lyra approached, with Kale following despite the medic's protests. The officer had removed Marek's helmet, revealing not the expected face of a Tafrian, but the distinctive features of an Earth human. "Earth intelligence," Lyra realized. "Another double agent." "Or triple agent," Kyle suggested. "Working for Earth while pretending to work for Tafria, while actually working for Phantom Corps. The layers of deception in this operation are unprecedented," Lyra admitted. "We need to question him immediately." But Marek's eyes had rolled back in his head, foam forming at the corners of his mouth. The same suicide protocol Kale had witnessed in the medical facility. "No!" Lyra shouted, but it was too late. The agent convulsed once, then went still. "They're thorough," Kale observed grimly. "No loose ends." Lyra's communication device chimed with an urgent alert. Her expression shifted from frustration to alarm as she read the message. "The retrieval team found the containment unit," she reported. "It's been breached. The prototype is missing." "Could it have been destroyed in the fall?" Kale asked. "Unlikely. These units are designed to protect their contents even under extreme conditions." Lyra's concern was palpable. "If someone reached it before our team—" She didn't need to finish the thought. If Phantom Corps had backup operatives in the maintenance tunnels, they could already be escaping with the prototype. "We need to lock down the entire facility," Lyra decided. "Every exit, every access point." But even as she gave the order, Kale knew it might be too late. In a facility this size, with maintenance tunnels connecting to the wider city infrastructure, achieving a complete lockdown would be nearly impossible. The prototype was out there, somewhere in Neo-Athena, and whoever had it now possessed the potential to shift the balance of power across the galaxy. As security teams scrambled to implement the lockdown, Kale felt a subtle vibration from the disk Velen had given him. The Eridonians were signaling him. They had information. "I need a moment," he told Lyra, stepping away from the chaos of the security operation. Finding a relatively private corner, he examined the disk. It was pulsing with bioluminescence, similar to the Eridonians' natural patterns. As he watched, the patterns formed into a simple message. Maintenance exit, southeast corner, urgent. Kale glanced toward Lyra, who was fully occupied coordinating the security response. No one was paying particular attention to him at the moment. He could slip away unnoticed, but should he? Trust had become a scarce commodity in this situation. The Eridonians had been helpful so far, but they had their own agenda regarding the prototype. Still, they were the only ones who hadn't lied to him or used him as an unwitting test subject. Decision made. Kale quietly made his way toward the southeast corner of the facility. As predicted, the chaos of the security response made his movement relatively unnoticed. He found the maintenance exit, a small, unassuming door marked with technical symbols rather than standard exit signage. As he approached, the door opened seemingly of its own accord. Stepping through, he found himself in a narrow service corridor where Etri and Velen waited, their distortion fields deactivated. "We must move quickly," Velen said without preamble. "The prototype has been taken." "I know," Kale replied. "Tafrian security is initiating a lockdown, but not by Phantom Core," Etri interrupted. "By your Earth intelligence operative, Agent Quan." Kale's surprise must have shown on his face. "We observed her in the maintenance tunnels," Velon explained. "She retrieved the damage containment unit moments after it fell. The prototype itself appeared intact." "Where was she heading?" Kale asked. "Toward the industrial district," Etri answered. "Likely to a concealed extraction point where Earth forces can retrieve her." Kale considered his options. He could inform Lyra, but that would mean choosing Tafrian interests over Earth's. He could let Agent Quan escape with the prototype, but that would be choosing Earth over galactic security. Or he could pursue her himself, with the Eridonians' help, and make his own decision about what should happen to the technology. "Can you track her?" he asked the Eridonians. "Already in progress," Velen confirmed. "Our perceptual abilities allow us to detect the unique energy signature of the prototype. It leaves a trace we can follow." "Then let's go," Kale decided, before the lockdown makes exit impossible. The Eridonians led him through a maze of service corridors and maintenance tunnels, bypassing the security checkpoints being established throughout the facility. Their knowledge of the infrastructure was impressive. Either they had studied it extensively, or their perceptual abilities allowed them to intuit the most efficient paths. They emerged in a section of the industrial district Kale recognized from earlier, not far from where he had first met the Eridonians after escaping the Earth intelligence facility. "The trace leads there." Velen indicated a nondescript warehouse, approximately 200 meters ahead. "The energy signature is stable, suggesting the prototype remains inactive." "How do we approach?" Kale asked. "If Agent Quan has backup." "She is alone," Etri reported confidently. "Our perceptual scan detects only one biological presence in the structure. However, there is an energy signature consistent with a transport vessel preparing for launch." "She's planning to leave Tafria," Kale realized. "We need to move now." They approached the warehouse cautiously, with the Eridonians using their distortion fields to scout ahead. The building appeared ordinary from the outside, but Kyle noticed subtle security measures, sensors disguised as structural elements, what appeared to be a concealed weapon system above the main entrance. "There is a secondary access point," Velen reported, returning from their reconnaissance. "Less heavily secured. It would still require disabling 2 security systems." "Or brute force," Kale suggested. "The noise would alert the occupant," Etri cautioned. "Maybe that's not a bad thing," Kyle replied. "I'd rather confront Agent Quan directly than try to sneak up on a trained operative." The Eridonians exchanged looks, their compound eyes reflecting complex communication that their translator pendants didn't convert. "A direct approach has merit," Velen finally agreed. "But allow us to disable the automated defense systems first. Otherwise, you may not reach the door intact." Kale waited while the Eridonians worked, using technology he didn't recognize to neutralize the warehouse's external defenses. When they signaled readiness, he approached the secondary door, a reinforced service entrance designed for loading equipment. Without hesitation, he seized the door by its frame and, muscles bunching with controlled power, tore it from its moorings in one fluid motion. The sound of rending metal echoed through the warehouse beyond. "Subtle," commented Etri dryly. "Effective," Kale countered, stepping through the opening. Inside, the warehouse was largely empty, except for a sleek spacecraft positioned in the center, a short-range vessel designed for atmospheric exit and rapid interplanetary travel. Its engines were humming in pre-launch mode, suggesting imminent departure. Standing beside the vessel, the prototype containment unit at her feet, was Agent Stella Kwan. Her weapon was already drawn and aimed at Kale as he entered. "I should have expected this," she said, her voice calm despite the circumstances. "You've proven remarkably difficult to predict, Rourke." "A common trait among people who don't appreciate being manipulated," Kale replied, advancing slowly. The Eridonians remained outside, monitoring but not intervening yet. "This doesn't concern you anymore," Stella stated. "Go back to your powerlifting competitions and exhibition tours. Leave matters of galactic security to professionals." "It concerned me the moment you put me on that bus without my knowledge or consent," Kyle countered. "It concerned me when innocent people were endangered to test a theory about my capabilities. And it concerns me now because that prototype is too dangerous to be controlled by any single faction, including Earth." Stella's expression hardened. "You don't understand the bigger picture. Tafria violated multiple treaty agreements by developing this technology. If they retain control, they could achieve technological supremacy within a decade. Earth intelligence is securing it to ensure balance." "By giving Earth the same advantage?" Kale challenged. "That's not balance, it's just shifting the imbalance. We would study it, understand it, then develop appropriate containment protocols," Stella insisted. "The technology would be secured under multi-faction oversight." "If that were true," Kale observed, "you wouldn't be here alone, preparing for a covert extraction. You'd have official channels managing the seizure." Stella's slight hesitation confirmed his suspicion. This wasn't an officially sanctioned operation, at least not at the highest levels. It was a rogue action by a faction within Earth intelligence. "Last chance. Rourke," she warned, her weapon never wavering. "Walk away. This is beyond you." Kale continued his slow advance. "I don't think it is. I think I'm exactly the person who should be making this decision. Someone with no political allegiance to Earth or Tafria. Someone who was used by both sides. Someone who has seen firsthand how dangerous unchecked ambition can be." "I don't want to shoot you," Stella said, genuine regret in her voice. "Your genetic material would be invaluable to understanding the full potential of the prototype." "You won't shoot me," Kyle replied with certainty, "because you know I'm right." He was within 10 meters now, close enough to see the conflict in Stella's eyes. She was a professional, trained to complete her mission at all costs. But she was also human, with an innate sense of right and wrong that was clearly troubled by the circumstances. "The prototype needs to be destroyed," Kale continued. "Not studied, not contained, not replicated. Destroyed. Technology that can evolve itself beyond its creator's understanding is too dangerous for anyone to control." "That's not your decision to make," Stella insisted. But her weapon had lowered slightly. "Then whose is it?" Kale challenged. "Earth's? Tafria's? Phantom Core's? The Eridonians whose research was misused to create it in the first place?" At the mention of the Eridonians, Stella's eyes widened slightly. "What do you know about Eridonian involvement?" "More than you might expect," Kale replied, and as if on cue, Etri and Velen entered through the damaged doorway, their distortion fields deactivated. "The principles used to create the replication technology were shared by our people for medical purposes only," Velen stated, floating forward. The adaptation to weapons and defense systems represents a fundamental violation of that trust. The prototype contains a failsafe that only we can activate, Etri added. A self-destruct protocol encoded at the quantum level that cannot be detected or removed by conventional means. This was news to Kale, but he kept his expression neutral, not wanting to undermine the Eridonian's position. Stella's tactical assessment had clearly changed with the arrival of the Eridonians. She glanced between them, Kale, and the containment unit at her feet, calculating her options. "If what you say is true," she finally said, addressing the Eridonians, "why haven't you activated this failsafe already?" "It requires physical contact with the prototype in its active state," Velen explained. "We have been unable to access it until now." Stella's weapon was still raised, but her resolve was visibly weakening. "How do I know this isn't a trick to gain possession of the technology for Eridonian interests?" "You don't," Etri replied simply. "But consider the evidence. We could have taken the prototype while it was unsecured in the maintenance tunnels. We didn't. We could have left Kale Rourke ignorant of our involvement. We didn't. Our actions have consistently aligned with containment and neutralization, not acquisition." The logic was sound, and Kale could see Stella processing it. He decided to press the advantage. "The right choice isn't always the easy one," he said quietly. "Sometimes it means sacrificing a potential advantage for the greater good. Sometimes it means admitting that certain lines shouldn't be crossed, regardless of the benefits." For a long moment, the warehouse was silent except for the hum of the spacecraft's engines. Then, with a deep breath, Stella lowered her weapon completely. "If I allow this," she said, her voice tight with the gravity of her decision, "I'll be branded a traitor by certain factions within Earth intelligence, and honored as a hero by others who understand the true implications," Kale countered. "Sometimes the bravest thing a soldier can do is refuse an order that violates their core principles." Stella considered this, then nodded slowly. "Do it," she said to the Eridonians. "But I want to witness the process, to confirm it's actually destroyed." Velen and Etri approached the containment unit. Using their specialized knowledge, they deactivated the security measures and opened the casing to reveal the prototype itself, a surprisingly small device, no larger than Kale's palm, composed of an iridescent material that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal despite being solid. "The containment breach damaged the outer casing," Velen observed, examining the device. "But the core components appear intact." "Is that good or bad for the destruction process?" Kale asked. "It simplifies access," Etri replied, producing a small tool from their hovering disk, "but increases the risk of energy discharge during deactivation." "Meaning?" Stella pressed. "Meaning we should move back," Velen advised. "At least 10 meters." Kale and Stella retreated to the suggested distance, while the Eridonians began a complex procedure, manipulating the prototype with their specialized tools and what appeared to be direct bioenergetic interaction, their bioluminescent patches pulsing in coordinated patterns as they worked. The prototype began to glow, first softly, then with increasing brightness until it was painful to look at directly. The hum that emanated from it rose in pitch until it was almost beyond the range of human hearing. "Final sequence initiated," Etri announced. "Containment field recommended." Velen activated a device that created a shimmering hemisphere around the prototype and the Eridonians. Within this protective bubble, the light from the device intensified to blinding levels. Kale instinctively moved in front of Stella, shielding her with his body as the light reached its peak. A silent pulse of energy rippled through the warehouse, powerful enough to be felt rather than seen or heard. Then, abruptly, darkness and silence. As their vision readjusted, Kale and Stella saw the Eridonians floating beside what remained of the prototype. Now, nothing more than a small pile of inert, crystalline dust. "Quantum destabilization complete," Velen confirmed. "The replication system has been neutralized at the fundamental level, It cannot be reconstructed or replicated using any known technology. A complex mixture of emotions crossed Stella's face: relief, regret, and something like peace. It's done, then. It's done, Kale agreed. But their moment of resolution was interrupted by the warehouse's main doors bursting open. Commander Lyra Dex strode in, flanked by a full tactical team with weapons ready. "Nobody move!" she ordered, taking in the scene with practiced efficiency, the spacecraft ready for launch. Stella and Kale standing together, the Eridonians hovering near what appeared to be a pile of glittering dust. "You're too late, Commander," Stella said, holstering her weapon in a deliberate, non-threatening motion. "The prototype has been destroyed." Lyra approached cautiously, signaling her team to secure the perimeter. "Destroyed? On whose authority?" "On the authority of those who created the fundamental principles it was based on," Kale answered, indicating the Eridonians. "The technology was too dangerous to exist. For Earth, for Tafria, for anyone." Lyra examined the crystalline remains, her expression unreadable. Then, to Kale's surprise, she nodded slowly. "Perhaps it's for the best," she admitted. "The security breaches during this incident have demonstrated that no containment would have been truly adequate." She turned to Stella. "However, Agent Kwan, you're still guilty of multiple violations of Tafrian sovereignty and security protocols. You'll be detained pending diplomatic resolution." Stella didn't resist as two security officers moved to take her into custody. "I accept responsibility for my actions," she said with dignity, "though I maintain they were necessary under the circumstances." As they led Stella away, Lyra approached Kale and the Eridonians. "This incident will have significant diplomatic repercussions. Earth and Tafria relations were already strained. This won't help." "Perhaps a neutral perspective could be beneficial," Velen suggested. "Someone who has witnessed the actions of all parties involved and has no inherent political allegiance." Lyra glanced at Kale, understanding dawning. "You're suggesting Rourke as some kind of mediator?" "I'm suggesting," Velen clarified, "that his unique position, having been used by both sides yet choosing to act for the greater good, gives him moral authority that traditional diplomats might lack." Kale hadn't considered this possibility. His plan had extended only to destroying the prototype and then returning to his life, whatever that might look like after these events. "I'm not a diplomat," he protested. "I'm a powerlifter." "You're more than that," Etri countered. "You demonstrated exceptional judgment under extreme pressure. You chose principle over advantage. These are qualities often lacking in formal diplomatic channels." Lyra considered this, then activated her communication device. "I need to report this to Central Command. The diplomatic implications will be handled at levels far above my authority." She paused, then added, "But I will recommend Rourke's involvement in the resolution process. His perspective would be valuable." As Lyra stepped away to make her report, Kale found himself at a crossroads. The events of the past days had changed him in ways he was only beginning to understand. His strength, once valued only for competition and exhibition, had saved lives, influenced decisions, and potentially altered the course of interplanetary relations. "What will you do now?" Velen asked, sensing his contemplation. "I don't know," Kyle admitted. "Going back to lifting weights on stages seems inadequate somehow." "There are other ways to use strength," Etri observed. "Not all involve physical power." "The Interspecies Cooperation Initiative is always seeking individuals with cross-cultural experience," Velen suggested, "particularly those who have demonstrated ability to bridge different perspectives." "Is that a job offer?" Kale asked, surprised. "More of a direction to consider," Velen clarified. "Your actions during this crisis revealed capabilities beyond mere physical strength. It would be wasteful not to develop them." Before Kale could respond, Lyra returned, her expression serious, but not grave. Central Command is dispatching a diplomatic team to handle the situation with Earth intelligence. They've requested that all involved parties remain on Tafria, pending full investigation. Including me? Kale asked. Especially you, Lyra confirmed. Your testimony will be crucial in understanding the full scope of the incident. She hesitated, then added, and yes, they expressed interest in your potential role as a neutral party in subsequent negotiations. Kale looked between Lyra and the Eridonians, then at the remains of the prototype that had caused so much chaos. He thought of the bus passengers whose lives he had saved, of the complex web of deception and counter-deception that had ensnared him, and of the choices he had made when faced with impossible situations. Perhaps there was something more for him than competition and exhibition. Perhaps his strength could serve a greater purpose on a wider stage. All right, he said finally. I'll stay, for now. 2 weeks later, Kale stood on a balcony overlooking Neo Athena, watching as the city's lights came alive with the setting of the twin suns. The diplomatic fallout from the prototype incident had been intense but contained. Neither Earth nor Tafria wanted public disclosure of the technology that had been developed and destroyed. Agent Stella Kwan had been returned to Earth custody after extensive debriefing. Her fate unknown, but likely complex, given the unauthorized nature of her final actions. Commander Lyra Dex had received both commendation for her handling of the security breach and subtle censure for the initial testing that had precipitated the crisis. The Eridonians, Etri and Velen, had returned to their homeworld, but not before establishing a communication link with Kale and suggesting that their paths would cross again soon. As for Kale himself, he had spent the past 2 weeks providing testimony, explaining his actions, and, surprisingly, being consulted on the development of new protocols for cross-species crisis management. His unique perspective as someone who had been both victim and hero, manipulated and manipulator, had proven valuable in identifying weaknesses in existing systems. A soft chime indicated someone at the door of his temporary quarters. It slid open to reveal an unexpected visitor, one of the Tafrian officials from the bus. The legitimate one who hadn't been a disguised agent. "Citizen Rourke," the official greeted him formally. "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all." Kyle invited him in. "Though I'm surprised to see you. I thought all official debriefings were complete." "This isn't an official visit," the Tafrian clarified. "It's a personal one. I never had the opportunity to properly thank you for saving my life on the skyline." Kale waved away the gratitude. "Anyone would have tried to help. Perhaps, but few would have succeeded." The official produced a small, ornate box. "The passengers of that transport, those of us who weren't undercover agents, have collectively prepared this token of appreciation." Curious. Kale accepted the box and opened it. Inside was a beautifully crafted medallion, unlike any he had seen before. It appeared to be made from materials contributed by different species: Tafrian crystal, Eridonian bioluminescent elements, Arcturian iridescent metal, and at its center, a small piece of what appeared to be Earth steel. "It's called a harmony token," the official explained. "An ancient Tafrian tradition, rarely extended to off-worlders. It symbolizes the unification of diverse elements into something stronger than its individual components." Kale lifted the medallion, feeling its perfect balance and unexpected lightness despite its apparent density. "It's beautiful. Thank you." "The inscription," the Tafrian indicated, "is in Old Tafrian. It translates roughly to "Strength finds purpose in service to others." The sentiment struck Kale deeply, resonating with his evolving understanding of his own capabilities and responsibilities. "There is one other matter," the official continued. "A communication arrived for you today from the Interspecies Cooperation Initiative. They've extended a formal invitation for you to join their crisis response team, a new division specifically formed to address situations requiring both diplomatic nuance and more direct intervention. Kale wasn't entirely surprised, given Velen's earlier suggestion. And what does Tafrian security think of this invitation? Officially, they recognize the ICI's authority to recruit as they see fit. The official smiled slightly. Unofficially, Commander Dex suggested it might be the perfect application of your unique skill set. Kale returned to the balcony, the Harmony token in his hand catching the last rays of the setting suns. Below, Neo Athena transformed from a city of crystal and light to a constellation of glowing pathways and illuminated structures. Somewhere out there, a Skyline bus traced its route over the light canyon, its passengers unaware of how close a similar transport had come to disaster. "When would they want me to start?" he asked. "Immediately. There's a transport leaving for the ICI headquarters on Nexus Station tomorrow morning." Kale considered the medallion, the city, and the path that had brought him here. From competitive failure to reluctant exhibition performer to unexpected hero. From being used as an unwitting test subject to making decisions that affected galactic security. Perhaps this was where his strength had been leading all along, not to trophies or acclaim, but to a place where it could truly make a difference. "Tell them I accept," he said finally. As the official departed, Kale remained on the balcony, watching Neo Athena's nightlife bloom beneath him. Tomorrow would bring a new beginning, a new purpose for his extraordinary capabilities. Not just as the Terran who had lifted a bus, but as someone who had chosen to use his strength, both physical and moral, for something greater than himself. The Harmony token caught the light of Tafria's rising moons, its diverse materials blending into a unified whole that was stronger and more beautiful than any single component could be alone. Like the mixed species on the bus he had saved, like the complex interplay of civilizations across the galaxy, there was strength in diversity, purpose in unity. Kale Rourke, the Terran powerlifter, who had once sought validation through competition, had found something more valuable, a calling that used all his strengths, not just those that could be measured in kilograms lifted or records broken. And as he looked toward the stars that held his future, he felt ready for whatever challenges that future might bring.